Alright, y'all, welcome back to the second part of my video. Just wanted to continue talking about the significant findings that I found within the literature. And I left off, yes, okay. I left off, this was my third significant finding that I found pretty interesting, is that parents not only need assistance with themselves that are abusing substances, but they also need assistance with appropriately caring for their children. So that substance abuse, it goes beyond just that parent, and it ultimately affects the whole household. And this is due to that constant, or that relationship between a parental substance abuse disorder, as it results to poor child outcomes later on in life. And lastly, another finding that I found quite interesting was that though parental substance use drastically increases that risk of child abuse, it often goes unrecognized by the social workers, even despite their experience, despite them observing, despite their education. A lot of times, as we know, social workers are very overwhelmed. So it was more difficult for these social workers to identify those symptoms of substance use disorder when they had multiple caseloads, as well as from the fathers. It was not as apparent in the fathers that they were abusing substances. So I found that to be quite interesting. Let's see here. So, some service for the families that are unfortunately experiencing both neglect as well, child neglect as well as substance use disorders. Here I listed some substance use networks, and I found them on a national level, of course. But once I visited these websites, it provided not only research behind it, but also areas, specific to your location where you can receive care. It had tips, had exercises. So these are some very important networks that I felt may be useful. Also, rehabilitation I found to be, very helpful for those who are experiencing the substance use disorders. And I feel that it's very important to address the substance use, because it's the substance use that increases the likelihood in the children experiencing neglect. So first you have to start with the top of the pyramid and address what is going on there first, which is why I provided a lot of substance use services for these families that are experiencing these conditions. So back to rehabilitation. The short-term residential was geared more towards those that have experiences with alcohol, alcohol abuse. And I found long-term residential treatment to be a little bit more suited for those that have those substance use disorders. And of course, as you know, you can do inpatient or outpatient, but it is a little bit more difficult to kick a disorder when you are doing outpatient because of the self-reporting. Also, group or individual, or individual counseling will be very beneficial for any family that is experiencing both sides of the child abuse as well as those substance use disorders. So let's go towards our intervention. So, and micro intervention, as we all know, it requires engaging directly with the individual as well as their immediate surroundings, which will be their families in this case. So, in terms of a neglected child as well as a substance abusing parent, micro intervention that I felt would be very helpful would be like therapy, such as group counseling. Not only will this assist the child, not only will this assist the parent in, at least addressing and acknowledging their substance use disorder, but it will also help the child in processing any type of trauma that they've experienced as a result of this. And more so, it allows them to rebuild that relationship if it has been broken between the parent and the child. So an effective program that I found would be the Project Connect. So the target population involves high-risk families that are experiencing child neglect or abuse, also living. So sorry. Also living in poverty, as well as the lack of education in a single parent household. A single parent household. I apologize about the calls. I put down do not disturb. As well as some additional services would be the home-based counseling for the family. That will be provided through Project Connect. So home-based counseling, substance abuse monitoring, nursing, service referrals for any type of additional service that may be helpful, parent education, parental groups, as well as ongoing support for any type of mothers in recovery, which kind of ties back to that single parent household of the target population. Also, the goal that this program hopes to achieve would be to maintain the children within the home, as well as reunify families that have been taken into care. On the meso level, that requires engaging with groups or organizations as they relate to the individual. So for this particular intervention, this may look like a child now being eligible for various services that they may receive throughout the state from nonprofit organizations and agencies that are there to aid children that are now in foster care. For the parent, it is a tad bit more difficult to be eligible for assistance prior to getting the help that they may need to kick that disorder. And let's see, a meso intervention, I found a program, the Sobriety Treatment and Recovery Teams, also known as START. The target populations are families with at least one child under the age of 6 that is currently placed in foster care, and the substance use of the parent is the primary risk factor for that child being in care. Services include local addictive treatment services, as well as assessment, wraparound services, which are always great, as well as family engagement with peers, providers, and the court systems. The goals of this particular program is to not only maintain permanency but decrease probability of maltreatment for those children and to achieve parental sobriety. Now, on the micro level, that intervention requires that that they engage as a whole as it relates to the individual. So these are, of course, more large scale intervention. So just a quick example that I provide is that the parent could engage in very specific policy settings, such as town hall meetings, just to kind of address those issues that they see within the community that makes them vulnerable for substance use and abuse. So this may come in handy a lot more for those lower income families. Those are the communities that tend to be more susceptible to substance abuse and therefore child neglect. So just going to those local type of meetings could be a start for a micro intervention, just to kind of address those issues on a larger scale that is beyond that individual or beyond that family. You're working towards a community intervention. So, in conclusion, just some key points I really want you all to take home and understand from my presentation on child neglect and substance abuse disorders is that substance abuse not only impacts the parent, but it impacts every member of the household, whether it is the significant other, the spouse, more importantly, like I've been discussing, well, not more importantly, but like I've been discussing, the child, because they are vulnerable, they are unable to care for themselves. So it's very essential that they are properly taken care of, and unfortunately those parents that utilize substances are unable to care for them. So with them not being able to care for them, they are more likely to experience maltreatment, abuse, and ultimately more likely to end up in the child welfare system, as well as experience those residual effects of the removal, not only and they begin immediately after the removal. Just that trauma from that, as well as that possibility of taking on those drugs later on themselves. And to tie it all together, by focusing on improving these parental practices as well as working on the functions of the family, the problems faced by the children are reduced significantly. So by, like I said, tackling the head of the household who unfortunately has these disorders, you are more likely to decrease, but you are able to decrease that, the trickling down effects that the children may feel, and that ultimately leave them subject to child neglect. All right, thank you all. I really hope you all enjoyed. I hope you all learned something. I am looking forward to any of your questions, concerns, and comments regarding child neglect and substance abuse. Thank you all. Have a good one.